The Washington Post is reporting that there is a group of about a dozen, what they're describing as moderate Senate Democrats, considering striking a bipartisan deal to end the shutdown and fund the government if Republicans pledge to put the ACA subsidies up for a vote. I'm guessing, because I've been watching what you've been saying and watching what you've been saying online, that you don't think that's the right strategy. But tell me why.
Well, I mean, first of all, it was great to see Governor-elect Cheryl and you talking about, what a big win she had last night. This was a night where, clearly it was a referendum on Trump's corruption and chaos. But I also do think that this was an endorsement of the Democratic Party, which has been for the first time this year really showing some fight, standing up for our values and saying, listen, we're not going to sign on to a corrupt, immoral budget. People don't want the shutdown to continue any longer than is necessary, but they know who's causing it. Increasingly, people say, listen, this is Donald Trump's shutdown. All he has to do is sit down and negotiate with Democrats for a couple hours, and the shutdown could be over. Because what are we asking for? It's not unreasonable. It's not earth-shattering. We're just saying, don't raise premiums on 22 million Americans by 25, 75, 150% this fall. That's what we're asking for, to get the government back open and operating. And the president could cut that deal in a matter of minutes. So, yes, I think it would be very strange after the country just came out and rewarded Democrats for finally standing up and fighting for our values, to then give in to Donald Trump and cease fighting. Donald Trump said this morning he doesn't want the shutdown to continue. And so it's probably just a matter of time before he's in a discussion with Democrats about how to end the shutdown and protect people in this country from these massive health care increases. Maybe that's overly optimistic, but we should at least, wait a few days to find out how he's going to react to this thumping Republicans took last night.
Yeah, I mean, it's the moral thing to do, the right thing. I think I first met you when you were running on healthcare. You've been fighting on this issue for 2 decades, longer than that. It's the morally right thing, but it's also politically the right thing. If you're Trump, it's politically the right thing to make sure costs don't go up on healthcare. Do you think after the thumping last night, I love that term, and it was a clear referendum on Trump, a clear referendum in support of what the Democrats are standing for, do you think any Democrats' spines have stiffened who may have been a part of this group who were kind of contemplating folding on this?
I mean, we've obviously been in close discussions all day today. The folks who are in that room talking to Republicans, in discussions with people like me who believe that, we should continue this fight to protect people's health care. And, hopefully there, will be some fruit from those discussions in the coming days.
And that's why President Trump has said Republicans need to get tough, they need to get smart, and they need to use this option to get rid of the filibuster, to reopen the government and do right.
The Republicans lost badly last night, and the reason that they lost badly is that people are really quite disgruntled and disgusted with Trumpism in a general sense. And in terms of health care, what people are saying is we cannot afford a doubling in our health care premiums. In Vermont, we are seeing people being asked to pay a tripling or a quadrupling. Who can afford that? And people are saying it is insane to throw 15 million Americans, low income and working class people, off the health care that they have, resulting in some 50,000 unnecessary deaths each year. All to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%. Elon Musk, in my view, and in the view of most Americans, really does not need a tax break so that we can throw people off of healthcare. There is a revolt against Trumpism. I think Democrats have the momentum. And now what has got to happen is Trump has got to come to the table and say, okay, let's make sure that premiums do not go up. Let's make sure that we do not throw millions of people off healthcare. He does that, we can end the shutdown tomorrow.
So that wasn't the message, though, that he delivered today. Basically, instead of talking about working with Democrats, he was saying eliminate the filibuster today. I mean, he was making that message pretty clear to those Republicans in the room this morning.
But he's not going to, apparently, from what I understand, that's not going to be the case. The Republicans understand that the filibuster is an important part of what the Senate is, that it's not going to happen. And, look, I happen to think that Trump is a little bit crazy, and I think he lies all of the time. But he's not stupid, and he's a good politician. And I think he is catching on that he is playing a losing hand. People cannot, he talks about affordability, really. Well, when you double people's health care premiums, you're not bringing affordability. You're making it impossible for people to survive. I think he understands that. I think he is going to come to the table.
Do you think he gets the frustration on affordability, or do you think he just gets the messaging of it?
I think he is distressed that people are catching on to what he is doing. Look, you do a poll, CNN do a poll. You ask people whether we should give the 1% $1 trillion in tax breaks and double premiums for ordinary Americans. I will say that 90% of the people think that's a crazy idea. That's what they're trying to push. The American people are catching on and saying no.
The president said today something that, I mean, it was really remarkable for him to come in the room today and say Republicans are bearing the blame of this shutdown more so than Democrats, which he lamented. He called Democrats kamikazes when it came to keeping the government closed, saying that they don't care about reopening it. But he said that he thinks last night's election makes Democrats less willing to reopen the government. Do you think that's the case?
Well, I think what the message of last night, and it really was a sweeping victory, not only in New York and in Virginia and New Jersey, but in small towns in Connecticut, in California. I mean, it really was an overwhelming wave, which has a lot to do with people saying, you know what, you guys got to stand up to this Donald Trump, not only his authoritarianism, but his war against the working class of this country and his horrible positions on healthcare. That was the message that I took. Stand up, be firm, and Trump, who is nobody's fool, will in fact come to the table.
That's the message you took. Do you think Democratic leadership took away that same message as you?
And you got to ask Democratic leadership.
I mean, that's what you said today when reporters were asking you questions.
I don't want to speak for Mr. Schumer. He's quite capable of speaking for himself.
But were you satisfied with his response today, his reaction to last night's wins?
I think you got to go beyond just saying, I want to meet. Sure, they should be meeting. Sure, you know, the president should be inviting Jeffries and Schumer into the White House to discuss it. But I think we've got to lay out what we want. And what we want is what the American people want. And what the American people want is not a doubling in the health care premium. So we got to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. We got to make sure that 15 million people are not thrown off the health care they have.
And that has been something, I mean, you've talked about health care obviously for decades and how it needs to be fixed in this country. One thing though, in terms of what this looks like is how it's being used in this shutdown. You've acknowledged that it's a point of leverage for Democrats in the government shutdown as you're fighting to extend the Obamacare subsidies. Republicans have used that language from Democrats and saying that your leverage is hardworking Americans.
No,
what would you say to that?
What I say is that throughout the modern history of this country, when a majority party does not have 60 votes in the Senate to keep the government open, to pass a government budget, you need 60 votes, correct? That's what you need. Senate rules.
Look, let's be honest. Donald Trump and his entire White House are in absolute chaos right now. The last election hit them harder than they ever expected, and they still haven't figured out how to recover. Republicans are stuck in a government shutdown that's politically toxic, and it's clear they have no clue how to negotiate their way out of it. Why? Because they don't care about helping people. They don't want families to have food assistance, they don't want healthcare to stay affordable, and they sure don't want to admit that their policies are destroying lives. Democrats aren't going to cave to that. They're not going to sell out the American people just to make Donald Trump look competent again. And you can see Trump spiraling. He's panicking. He knows his popularity is tanking, and now even some of his own people are turning on each other. Carolyn Leavitt, one of his loudest defenders, is now openly attacking fellow Republicans. That's where we are. The MAGA movement has officially started eating itself alive. It's like watching a civil war inside the Republican Party, and honestly, I can't stop smiling. Let's break down what's really going on. Democrats are finally standing up and saying, no more. They're not going to sign off on a corrupt, immoral budget. They're fighting for something real, for people's health care, for affordable living, for basic decency. Meanwhile, Trump could end this shutdown in a matter of minutes. All he'd have to do is agree not to raise healthcare premiums on 22 million Americans. That's it. But instead, he's busy pointing fingers and yelling at everyone in his orbit. Behind closed doors, he's been raging at Republicans, screaming at Lindsey Graham, demanding they end the filibuster so he can get his way. He's losing control, and everyone knows it. The election results were a clear rejection of Trump's chaos, corruption, and cruelty. Americans are done with the dysfunction. And Bernie Sanders put it bluntly, if Trump's healthcare cuts go through, 50,000 people will die every single year. That's not politics. That's life and death. This isn't about partisanship. It's about protecting people from policies that would literally kill them. Republicans keep pretending this is all about affordability. But let's be real, you can't double people's healthcare costs, kick millions off their plans, and then act like you're the ones fighting for working Americans. That's not affordability. That's cruelty. And voters are finally catching on. This election was a referendum on Trumpism, a massive rejection of the lies, the greed, and the attacks on ordinary people. From big states like New York and Virginia to small towns across the country, voters stood up and said, enough. They want leaders who actually care, who will protect healthcare, feed families, raise wages, and take on corporate corruption. So now it's time for Democrats to stay strong. No backroom deals, no folding. The American people rewarded courage, not compromise. Trump's party is collapsing under the weight of its own hypocrisy, and they're trying to figure out who to blame. They say it's a messaging problem. No, it's a moral problem. You can't starve children and bankrupt families, then complain that people don't understand your message. People understand just fine, and that's why they're voting you out. So yes, the Republican Party is in shambles. Trump is furious, his allies are turning on each other, and their so-called movement is falling apart. Meanwhile, Democrats are holding the line, and that's exactly what they need to keep doing. This is a moment of strength, a moment to fight, to protect people's health care, to defend democracy, to remind everyone that compassion and competence still matter in this country. So keep speaking up, keep pushing back, because what we're witnessing right now is the slow, messy collapse of Trump's grip on power, and honestly, it's about time. Keep your heads high, keep fighting, and keep smiling. The tide is finally turning.